Hey guys, welcome back. The next episode, I want to dive into something that actually was like two stories that happened in the same day. The first one was I was talking to a close friend about a new job that she's applying for, and I think she's gonna get, and I think everything's gonna work out really well in her favor. But when she was talking to the CEO, the question that he asked was, what is the most important leadership skill to you? And so she had asked me, she's like, so what do you think it is? Then I'll tell you mine. So we talked about it. We had a great conversation about it. And I said, what I really like about that is it's like a great qualifier question because there is no right or wrong answer. It's just going to be it. But what the answer, like how you respond is going to give you an understanding of how the person thinks, whether that be they choose integrity, and then you can kind of pull on that thread of like, well, what does integrity mean to you, and like, why do you think that that's so important? And if it's accountability, if it's transparency, if it's like whatever the thing is that you think the number one leadership thing is, it will tell more. So it kind of is a question that opens up conversations and gives you a little bit more insight into who you are. It's like a qualifier in some ways. Now, the next example, or like within the same day, later in that day, I was having a get to know with a guy who is down in Texas, super successful podcast, has done a lot over the years, loves cars, which him and I vibed over cars. But one of the cool things that he was telling me is he was trying to find a church. And so we're just kind of talking about that. And he said, there's just a ton of jumbo churches down here. He's like, but none of the main pastors are actually willing to give me kind of one-on-one time. And he's like, and for me, he's like, that's what I need out of a church. He's like, if the pastor can't sit down with me and have a cup of coffee so that we can actually talk about, just get to know him get to know me, like trying to understand, again, from a leadership style, like how he leads the church, what his vision is for the community and the congregation, then it really, like, it doesn't pass his qualifier. So he's like, I'm not going to go spend time, money at a church if I can't get on board with, if I can't vibe basically with the head pastor. So I never even really thought about it, because for me, I would just always go and sit in church and go, okay, do I like the message? Do I like this? Do I feel comfortable? And I didn't really have a great criteria. What I recognize is I would always conform to everybody else versus having more of a criteria for myself, right? Okay, I'm going to go spend more time if this can be true, or if I get this piece of this done. And so in that same moment, or, within that same day, I realized and had a reflection that I think God was trying to say, hey, you probably need some qualifiers in your life. And I think that was a very important and timely message, because early on, when you start to be involved with, people, and you're like, hey, I can be friends with them, I can be friends with them. It reminds me when I was when I first set foot on my undergrad campus, University of Akron. And it was like, you show up and everybody that weekend, everybody wants to be your friend. Because everybody that walked into the university left their parents behind, right? Like it was just, this was the first time for them to be out on their own. So everybody was like, oh my gosh, like we're going to be best friends. We're going to be best friends. And we're going to be best friends. And we all need to hang out. And it reminds me of, like, that's how I had been living my life, which was the first day of college, trying to be everybody's friend, trying to go be there, say, oh, it doesn't matter if you do this, or it doesn't matter if you, have good habits, bad habits, a great mindset, poor mindset. Like, I just want to be your friend. And over time, the more things that you have in your life, whether it's responsibilities or whether it's just things that you're trying to go do in life, the more complicated your life gets, the more that it's a reminder that you have to have qualifiers, because you only have 24 hours in the day. So if you were to go out, just like Akron, right, where you said, hey, I'm going to be friends with everybody, and everybody wanted to take, an hour out of your time. Well, there's only so many hours that you have day in and day out to be able to do all the things that you need to go do. It could be a job, could be family time, could be kid time, could be hobby time, could be, charity time, whatever that it is. You only have so much time that you can go along. So this idea of a qualifier helps you to get to that next level, because it's going to be required. Every level that you get to requires a little bit more qualifiers, meaning right now, Tony Robbins will only meet with you if you get, if you spend whatever it is, like probably $100,000, I think at this point, one-on-one time. Well, that's a much bigger barrier of entry than somebody who might just be starting out. The person who just started at the company will have different qualifiers and different criteria that needs to be met to have one-on-one time than the CEO of the company. And although you might be able to get little snippets of it, it's like, what's going to be sustaining, right? You can set up like a get to know session, but if it's a, hey, week in and week out, how are you living your life? Who are the people that you constantly are surrounding yourself by? You will notice people will have their barriers or their qualifiers. And so one thing, like the aha for me, is that access should not necessarily be automatic. Access should be earned, tested, and stewarded. And so one clarifying comment there is there's a difference between walls and gates, because I can hear, if somebody were to hear this message and say, well, I have to have a whole bunch of qualifiers, that basically says I need to build up all these walls in order to isolate myself. And that's not necessarily true. I think when you put up walls don't have access where gates do. Like, said differently, if you were to build a moat around your entire house and nobody could enter into your house, well, like, that's a wall. Now you've basically prevented anybody from coming in. However, you somewhat practice this today, whether it's an apartment that you live in, whether it's a house, like there is a lock and there is a key, and only somebody who has the key can get into your house, or if they know that you're home, that you will let them in, right? But you still have to be able to open the door. All we're doing is we're taking that out to your time. So not necessarily like a place, but your time. And I don't want it to be that we're building up walls, because those walls prevents that communication, prevents you from connecting with the people that ultimately are going to help you get to your next level or next spot in life. Okay. So I'm not talking about building walls so that nobody can get in. I'm talking about building gates so that the right people, the right opportunities, and the right responsibilities can come in through that proper entrance. Okay. Because like another way that I've kind of looked at this is that walls is very fear-based, right? I don't want to let people in. I'm afraid of what they're going to think. I'm afraid of what might be said. I'm afraid of them getting to know me and then exploiting me. And then now I'm hurt. Whereas gates are more of like a wisdom based. I'm going to put these out, and I'm only going to hang around with people who, like, for a lot of people, like, this was a new one for me. Hang around people who have healthy relationships. If you're hanging around couples who are just constantly at each other's throats, threatening divorce and threatening to just get, to rid themselves of each other, is that are those the types of people that you want to be around? Might not mean that they might need help in order to rebuild their relationship, but if they're just, if they go out drinking at the bar every single night and wake up hungover, and you're in the life phase where you're trying to be good examples for your kids, then those two might not resonate, which basically says you do have some type of a gate. It's just, are you consciously aware of those gates, or are you just having gates that happen there by circumstance? And the other distinction here between like walls and gates is walls will isolate, gates will protect. And what you're looking to go do is to kind of protect yourself, but not necessarily isolate yourself. Because walls can quickly say, well, I don't trust anybody, right? You can quickly get down to that point where you say, well, I don't trust anybody then. Where a gate will say, hey, I'm responsible for what I give access to. So if I'm going to give you access and time, that's fine. I'm going to give you my whole heart, but I'm not going to go give myself to somebody who is not going to equally receive it and also, give it back to you. Like, I'm sure we've all been in that situation where we've tried to talk to a friend to help them, and no matter what they do, they just won't take our advice. They won't listen to us because they think, well, you don't know what it's like. I know what I need, and I'm just going to go down my own path. Well, that's sweet, but then don't call me for advice. Like, if you're going to call and want to talk about advice, but then never actually listen to things that I'm saying, well, then why do I want to waste my time trying to help you if you're not even going to take those words because you don't deem them as valuable, or you don't deem them as whatever? You're just looking for the attention, because how people interact with you will let you know what they're needing from you. Are they just needing your attention, which is, hey, somebody's paying attention to me? Or they actually value you and are willing to listen to you and willing to put into practice the things that you're telling them, and vice versa. Are you doing that to others? Are you looking for attention from somebody, but you're not willing to actually go do the necessary work if you're looking for their help in that piece, right? So there's there's different things, there's different ways, mechanics wise, on necessary access. Access to your time. Not every meeting deserves a yes. I've had this happen quite a lot, actually, in the new role at GE, where it's a lot of emails and a lot of meetings will come up, and a lot of times I'll go, I don't know that I necessarily need to be there, or I'll send a clarifying email and go, what is it you want to get out of this meeting? If you're looking to try to connect with the right person, then just tell me what you're trying to go do, and I'll go in 10 seconds, I'll go find the right person and connect you to. If it's you are struggling with something and by the end of it you want to be able to have what are going to be the next steps, like that's cool. Like let's focus in on that. But if it's just a meeting for the sake of meeting where we're just talking about talking in circles and we're not necessarily moving forward, well, then that's where I have issue. Because if we're just talking around in circles and that's a 30 minutes, that's an hour, that's a half a day wasted in just talking around in circles and not actually moving stuff forward. And for me, I realize my time is getting really sparse, so that wherever I choose to spend my time, I want it to have some type of a return. I want to be able to either say I was able to really connect and bond with a person, I was able to really understand somebody, I was able to really either help them, or maybe I needed help and so that they can help me. You have access to your mind. Not every voice deserves the influence. Like, we live in a time now in social media where you can scroll and every time that you scroll and listen to a reel, you're allowing that person to take up space in your own mind. Well, do you want them to? Because Instagram will send you, or Facebook will send you, an endless amount of reels. And try this, right? As you're going through scrolling and you choose to stop on something, right? Like for me, it might be like a garden, right? And all of a sudden now I'll start seeing more and more garden themes and garden hacks. Well, that's helpful if I'm in the mood to be able to go actually influence my garden, or like I'm looking to specifically go do that. Otherwise, it's just giving me a whole bunch of ideas that's flooding my brain in overwhelm. And then I transition that to, well, now I'm not doing, like, I'm seeing everybody else getting all that stuff done, but I'm not moving the needle because I'm getting more ideas in that I'm actually able to go progress outwardly. And so, I mean, there's things like political stuff will come up. And there's a lot of it where I just go, you know what? It doesn't matter the side of the fence, doesn't matter blue or red. I'm over the overwhelm. I'm over the distraction. I'm over not getting the full story. So not even giving it the time of day, because it's not worth it. It's not worth trying to go down that rabbit hole and then saying, well, how true is that? Now I need to go fact check. Well, then that wasn't actually really said. It was a snippet of a conversation, but then this bill gets passed. So then you're trying to understand and tie out what's actually truth. It takes a lot of brain power, right? So just be aware of who or what you're giving access to your mind to. Like access to your family. Not every person should get proximity to your wife, kids, and your inner circle. There's a lot of people that I talk to on a daily basis that haven't met Amber. And I kind of use Amber as that true inner circle, which is because when I feel safe enough, when I feel like I can put her in a situation that we can be safe together with, well, then fine, that works out well. But there's a lot of instances where, and this was true early in our relationship, where I got along with somebody, but they didn't necessarily get along with Amber. Well, then all that would end up happening is we would all get together, we'd hang out one time, Amber would, those two would butt heads, or those, 2 or 3 would butt heads. And then ultimately I was kind of in that problem solving, and I realized, well, why make my life hard? I just am a natural extrovert. And so you'll have this, like in your relationship, you might be more of the introvert or you might be more of the extrovert. For me, I'm the extrovert. So for me, I almost kind of screen, okay, who are the people that we ultimately, when we go and have, break bread together, we have dinner or go out to do something, that it's like, whatever the number is, like, let's just say it's two couples. It's Amber and I, and then the other couple. Well, can I get along with a guy? Great. Can I get along with a girl? Great. Can she get along with a guy? Great. Can she get along with a girl? Great. And then as a couple, do we have similar values? Do we have similar ways that we approach and treat each other? Is he kind of a jerk to his girlfriend or wife? That is part of that whole dynamic. And the same thing with Lily, right? Lily wants to meet everybody and anybody under the sun. So that'll be a future lesson we'll have to teach her, but it's not everybody is just because you want to go see everybody doesn't mean that everybody wants to see you, but then also you shouldn't be trying to go see everybody, because not everybody wants what's best for you. Not everybody is going to be as supportive for you. Some people you take your dreams and aspirations to, and they're just going to poo-poo all over them. Well, do you really want to continue to keep putting yourself in that situation to get poo-pooed on, to then feel bad about yourself and then not actually take action and then feel inspired again? And then when you get to feel inspired, you hang around those people, you get, poo-pooed on again, and then all of a sudden you can't take the next step forward. And so you're letting your dream kind of die because of external influence instead of where it is that you feel like your heart needs to take you, or where, God, universe, source is trying to lead you to. Okay. Same thing with your faith, same thing with your future. Just emotional energy too, right? I've been in so many conversations where, again, you're trying to help somebody and they're not willing to take the help. So like, that's why now any of my coaching clients, I always start off the conversation of how coachable are you? And coachable being defined as how willing are you to try new things, to be able to look inwardly. And you might not have to believe it in the moment, but are you willing to at least try it? Are you willing to at least try? Because if you're not, well, then no amount of money is going to get me to help you, because I know that no matter what it is that I come up with, or no matter what I hear from you, we're just never going to take that step forward. And if we're not going to take that step forward, then I look at that as, I don't want you to waste your money, nor do I want to waste either one of ours time. You might not be ready. You might be interested in making changes in your life, but you might not be dedicated enough to actually go forward with it. Does that make sense? So, when I think of some examples, before you marry somebody, right? Like, there's so much that I wish I would have gone back and known. And that's partially the inspiration for this podcast. Is I hope that I can share some of these messages for guys in their 20s that are still trying to figure out, who does Mrs. Right look like? Before you marry somebody, you're not just choosing a person, you're choosing a future household culture, right? What does conflict look like for you? How do you resolve that? What did marriage look like in your home growing up? Now, recognize, because I had a big bias when I was in the dating world, that anybody that kind of came from a broken home, I was like, hey, no, that's not going to be good. Like, that's not compatible, because if they came from a broken home, then a broken home will come from them. And then what I realized, what Amber taught me, was that that's not always true. Just because you came from a broken home, just because mom and dad split, doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to believe that. You can choose, right? We always choose. We're either going to be more like mom and dad, or we're going to choose a different path, almost like the antithesis of that. And so, what I found was that, like, Amber really much valued staying together. Like, she doesn't want to, get together and then, have a divorce or something like that. Like, she wants to stay in it. She wants to, I was going to say bury me, but that's kind of morbid, but like, stay till the very end, right? She wants to be that ride or die. So again, looking at that, when we first started talking, was, she made that a big point. She's like, yeah, mom and dad are divorced, but like, I'm looking for something that is going to be forever. I've seen what that life looks like, and that's not what I want. I want the complete opposite of that. And so again, right, that qualifier, all these questions that you have that helps you to get closer to the right people that you want to have in your life, as well as the right experiences in order to get to the future state where you're trying to go. What role does faith? Like, faith can be a big piece of this. What do you do when you're wrong? Do you openly admit, or do you try to come up with a whole bunch of shell games to say that you're never wrong? Like, we were watching, not How I Met Your Mother. There was a Modern Family, and the one couple, I forget their names, but like, the girl, she just never, like, no matter, she got an offender bender and she didn't admit it, and it was just this whole thing where she's like, I will never admit fault. And it was a funny comedic thing, but there's also some truth in that. Like, when you get together, recognize, are you going to always be trying to chase after what truth is? Or are you guys built to say it's going to be us first, and then we're going to go entertain the rest of the world, versus the rest of the world, and now I have to entertain you second? Okay. Around friendships, like, there's a lot of guys that I've known for 20 years, but the relationships still kind of pulls them backwards. A lot of guys, it was like, 50 Cent talks really good about this, where in order to get out of the ghetto, he had to fully get out of the ghetto. And, a lot of his really close friends and family, he was like, come with me. And they're like, no, 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 like you must be too good for us because you're no longer willing to live here. Like you're too good for the streets. And he ultimately had to get to the point where he says, if I stay here, I'm not going to be the type of person that I want to become. I can't go make my rap career, my film career, like all the things that he had, all of his future goals, he couldn't do it in that spot. He had to get around more influential people. He had to get around people that were more positive so that it pulled him into the right room so that he could go get his ideas, turn them from like an idea into an actual, business brand, etc. And, he was very humble about it. He was like, come with me. Like, I will pay. Like, you come with me. And they were like, no, you're the one drawing blood. Well, sometimes you're going to have to, because where you're trying to go may not be where you're living right now. Church, I covered some examples there. Social media. Like, this is another one. If a man gives every influencer, news cycle, outrage, podcast, algorithm, unrestricted access, then don't be surprised when the inner world will feel chaotic. So, a cool rule of thumb is, do I want to follow somebody? Like, would I invite this person into the dinner table and have a conversation and speak to my family? Because if the answer is yes, then okay, then it's worth a follow. If the answer is no, well, then sorry, you may have really killer content, but if there's still something that I don't trust about you, then I'm not going to continue to keep following that. Because ultimately that whatever that thing is, that hesitation or resistance, means that that's kind of out of alignment. Okay. So, as men grow in leadership, access becomes a little bit more expensive. Just like how I said, the person who started, has years 1 through 5 in the company is going to have a different level of access and a different level of expense to get to the access than somebody who is a CEO that's running, a multi-million-dollar corporation. Because when I start to think about why this is important, a leader without filters can become exhausted. A father without those filters can become very distracted. Well, a distracted father then isn't leading his family the way that he ultimately needs to. And if he's not leading his family the way he ultimately needs to, then that means that chaos can happen within his own walls. Husband without filters becomes absent, right? And also a man that doesn't have filters and doesn't put up the boundaries will become resentful. If you're trying to become that people pleaser, just like how I am/was, then you are going to give yourself to everybody and you won't put up the right boundaries. And if you don't put up the right boundaries, then you become resentful against the people, but they don't even know that you're resentful because ultimately you didn't voice your own opinions up front, which had said, hey, no, this is something I very much value. If you can't give this to me, then we're going to have to have some tough conversations. I love you. I can love you and you not be in my life. I can have love for you. I want you to be successful, but I don't think that for you to be successful and for me to be successful, that we're going to be tied together. Okay. So it leads me to like a couple of key points I want to make sure. Like, access is stewardship. Your time, whether it's your mind, your family, your faith, your future, they're not casual things. A passive man lets access happen to him by default, whereas a disciplined man sets all these gates up intentionally. And the more aware, you can't change that in which you're not aware of. So you have to become aware of where you're being lack with your gates, with your time, with the people, the social media, the food. What boundaries are you putting up with food? What are those qualifiers? Like, a great qualifier for food is, can I understand all of the ingredients? And I don't want this to be all extreme. I've adopted more of like the Pareto's principle. 80%, and for those that don't know, right, 80% of the results comes from 20% of the effort. And so, what I look at is, if I can control 80% of the food that I have, strict things around food for 80% of the time, there's 20% that's just fluff and can be fun. But for 80% of the food that I eat, it has to be essentially like singular ingredients. So can I boil stuff down into very simplified, whole ingredients? So we eat a lot of just basic foods, right? Basic fruits, basic vegetables, and the dips and the sauces and stuff like that. Okay, sure. If that is a combination of stuff and has some processed stuff in it, like, okay, might not be able to get fully away from it, but I at least try to have the intention as those gates so that when candy, like people bring in candy in the office, well, I'm not going to just go partake and smash all the candy. because that's out of alignment with where I'm trying to go, which is to be able to have a life that has not only energy, but then also physical health so that I can be here for my family, be here for Lily and hopefully a future kid, but be here for all those life phases that I ultimately want to be here for. Second thing, barriers are not always bad. This is kind of goes back to that concept where I said I can have love for you, but you might not be in my life. A fence around a garden is not hateful towards the rabbits that we have in our garden, right? It's just a protective for the harvest. Because the way I look at it is, okay, a bunny rabbit that's running around our 5 acres, they can eat, let's say, this amount, this distribution of food. They can eat grass, they can eat clovers, they can eat vegetables, they can eat like all the stuff. But the things on the homestead that we can eat that planted there for us is going to be this amount. So if I take the rabbit and I say, hey, you can have anything that you want as long as it doesn't take into account my garden, I'm still cool with you going and doing everything else. But don't you be in my garden. Don't you start eating my tomatoes and my strawberries, because those are the things that are feeding my family. And we need to be able to share. We need to be able to cohabitate. But rest assured, right, if you're in areas that you're not supposed to be in, then I need to set better boundaries. Okay. And that's true whether we're talking about homestead or whether we're talking about just people in our lives. Questions could be gates. So I talked, when I first started this, and I said that there were a couple questions, right? One was a qualifier for a job interview. The other one was being able to have start spending more time at a church. Well, look at all those, and what are the questions? What are great qualifying questions that you need to start practicing in order to get to know somebody well enough that you want to go spend more time with? Point 4, discernment requires courage. So this is a piece where it takes courage, especially if this doesn't come natural to you. Some people are very natural boundary setters. They're just great at it. Amber is the queen at it. She will set boundaries up like nothing at all and doesn't even think doesn't think twice about it. That's wonderful. I love her for that. But for some, myself included, the hard part is actually enforcing it. Okay, setting it and then also enforcing it. Because when you know something is off, you can override your discernment because you don't know or don't want to disappoint people. You don't want that to look difficult. You don't want it to seem judgmental, and you don't want to miss an opportunity. And I was talking to a client earlier this week about this exact thing. And he's like, but what if I miss the opportunity? Or what if I talk to this person, it kept me from being able to go talk to somebody who might have opened my world to a completely different level. I said, well, that's putting everything very contingent. And then when you put it on where you say, well, if I don't do this, then I know that you can lead yourself very quickly to not having any boundaries, but also recognize that what's meant for you will be for you. You just have to be open to it. But in order to be open to it, you have to be also closed off from certain things, which is a little bit of a dissonance. I get that. Like you have to, just like when I was when I was in the dating world, and this is, again, I wish I would have known this, growing up, but it's like, I told Amber, I said, I was so out of touch with it. There's a reason why I didn't find anybody until Amber, because when I would think about meeting girls, I would go out to like the gym. I would go out to, the hardware store. Like I would do things, I would just live my own life, but I was not in the areas where there were girls. Well, have a girlfriend and get married. And then I realized, oh my gosh, going to Home Goods and TJ Maxx and Target and the makeup store and Whole Foods, like all these places, that's where all the women are. So if you wanted to increase your chances to go find somebody, then you have to go and be in the environments that sets you up for the chance of success. Just like if you want to go double up your money game and become financially free, well, then going and sitting at the bar at 5 o'clock where everybody goes to drink their sorrows away from the day probably isn't going to be the best area or the best way to get the advice. Doesn't mean that you can't get it there, but the likelihood, the statistics behind it is not going to be like, you need to be in the right arenas. Okay. And having the courage to be able to say what I want, I'm willing to fight for, and get crystal clear on that. So hopefully that gives a little bit of flavor, examples, and the reason why this is so important. I see so many guys that are struggling with getting to the next level, and a lot of it is that they haven't changed the barriers of entry, or the qualifiers of the people that they're letting into their life. Like they're afraid to to hurt somebody. They're afraid to do something or get the feedback. And I get that that's where courage comes in. I understand and I can appreciate that. But I can also appreciate if you're over accommodating for somebody else, that they are not accommodating at all to you, well, then that's also not a great relationship to be in, because all you're doing is you're giving everything and you're not receiving anything. Well, in order to have a great, functional, sustainable relationship, both sides have to give and both sides have to take. Because if you're just giving all the time, sooner or later, you're going to have the 4-1 burnout. Level 4, which is what you want somebody else to be successful. And level 1, which is why is this always happening to me? I give, but when is it my turn? That level 4-1 crash, and you'll never be able to get out of it. So recognize that you've got to have some of these qualifiers if you're not getting to the right areas of life. Like if you're not getting to the right areas, if you're not exceeding or succeeding in where you want to get to. And it could be in any dimension of life, whether it's spiritually, whether it's time management, whether it's money, whether it's health, wealth, prosperity, relationships, intimate relationships, social relationships, personal relationship, like with yourself. All of it takes the same thing. And so I just want to leave you with a biblical anchor, and it comes from Proverbs, because Proverbs is, whether you believe or not believe, Proverbs by itself will give you a great recipe of wisdom, because it's just straight wisdom. So Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. So this is exactly this entire episode sort of summed up, is you need to be on guard for who you are allowing access to your heart, to your time, to your energy, to the people that you love, all of it. So this week, what I want you to do is take inventory of just one area where you've allowed too much access. Build one gate and ask just one better question. Set one clearer boundary for yourself and then protect that. Okay? If you want accountability, reach out. If this episode resonated with you and you feel compelled to leave a comment or a review, please do. That's how I'm trying to grow this podcast. I'm trying to get more of the word out to other guys so that they can get the tips, tricks, habits, everything else that they need in order to go build their version of the exceptional life. It starts with one listener, it compounds to 2, and it continues to keep growing. We've now had, I think, over 8,000 downloads. So I'm super blessed, super appreciative, but I want to continue to keep spreading that word out. So please, my ask for you this week is share it with somebody or leave a review so that when people come stumbling onto the podcast, that they see that, hey, this is actually making a difference in your world, in your life. Okay. With that, keep moving forward. Till next time, keep swinging.